Welcome to Focus Washington. My name is Chuck Conconi, and I have a really special guest here today, Stan Collender. And Stan is one of the ranking experts on the budget. Stan, thanks for being here.
My pleasure, Chuck, as always.
We watched the president's speech, and there was a lot of talk about the economy and the budget. Does this just mean that government is going to take over everything and be in control? And is this socialism, as a lot of people say?
First of all, I mean, let's just stop that. This is if you need to have a phrase, it's not socialism, it's assisted free enterprise. Okay. And in fact, free enterprise has always been assisted, whether we're helping people go to school or helping businesses with tax breaks or whatever, mortgage deduction so that people can buy a home who wouldn't otherwise be able to afford it. The government's always been involved. I mean, this is an emergency situation. It's kind of like having a tornado hit and saying, oh, this is not the government's responsibility. So this is, I mean, that's not even an issue, I don't think, anymore. Look, when you've got, all the automobile manufacturers and you've got all these Wall Street firms begging for help, when Citigroup comes back and says, I need more money, this is not socialism. This is free enterprise asking for help from the only entity that can actually help it. The interesting thing about the president's speech last night is that it wasn't exceptionally detailed. He wasn't talking to a Wall Street audience or a business audience last night. He was talking to the average person, and this was his equivalent of Franklin Roosevelt's speech. The only thing we have to fear is fear itself. The best thing he said, and it was, I think, at the end of the third paragraph, was don't, and I'm paraphrasing now, don't be worried about whether or not we're going to make this work. We will make this work. We're going to come out stronger. I'm on the case, is what he was saying.
Well, and that's interesting, too, because he was criticized for just before that, or a week or so before that, saying everything was so dire and it was going to be, we're going to collapse and we're going into wreck and ruin, and this was a more positive approach. Well, what is the correct approach?
Oh, well, I think it's got to be a combination of both, and I'm not sure that this wasn't purposeful. That is, that the new president was trying to manage expectations. There were a lot of people thinking he'd walk into the Oval Office, kind of, wave his hand over everything and make it better, and that wasn't going to happen. These are pretty deep-seated problems. What he was telling everybody is don't doubt that we're going to fix this, because we will. And that's what they needed to hear from him last night. It was in a very powerful, very uplifting speech in many, many ways. Even my wife, who is not terribly political, was listening intently and felt much better after the speech than she did before.
So that should affect the markets. You expect this week that the markets will be a lot better?
The markets operate on for a variety of reasons. They go up and down based on fundamentals, sometimes based on fear, other times sometimes just despite everybody, they go down when you're expecting them to go up. Yesterday, the market went up before the president's speech because the chairman of the Federal Reserve also said some very promising things.
That's right, he did.
And that made everyone feel a little bit better. The truth is, Wall Street, like everybody else, wants to know that someone's on the case and is paying attention. And as the details of the mortgage plan come out next week and more details of the bank rescue plan come out next week, I think they will be feeling a little bit better. But remember, who the president was talking to last night was not business. It was to the average voter at home. That was the audience for this. And if you noticed, a lot of times he said, I understand how angry you are. Mm-hmm. He wasn't talking to members of Congress. They're only angry because their constituents are. But there is an extraordinary anger out there. And he was saying, we will fix this and we will make those responsible pay. And there is an extreme demand these days that there be at least a pound of flesh extracted for all of this help.
But the average voter knows, me being an average voter too, and who doesn't understand economics or $1 trillion, that we're predicting a bad year this year with unemployment rising, and I don't understand where it goes. What has he said? Why am I supposed to feel more positive?
Well, because he's saying that, first of all, we're not going to fix it immediately. He's trying to tell you that, right? Don't expect me to push a button and fix this, because if anyone could have done that, my predecessor would have done it. What he's saying is, once the bad stuff gets over, all right, we will have put in place the mechanism so that we'll not only rise from the ashes, we will do even better than we did before. It'll be a more solid footing with energy, environment, and health. Energy, education, and healthcare is what he talked about. You've got infrastructure programs, the types of things that will get you back and forth to work a little bit faster with less gasoline. These are the kinds of things I think people ultimately want to see. And that is not Wall Street, but the average person just saying to a leader, tell me you're worrying about this for me, because that's what I elected you to do. And I thought that was the impression I got, is that strong, and remember, he's only been in office a month.
That's right.
And it was a strong speech, strongly worded, strongly delivered, very confident sounding. And you got the impression, again, I'm going to use my wife as my window of the world, that, all right, I'm going to give this guy the chance to do what he says needs to be done. Because economic issues don't turn around on a dime.
Okay, one last question. Louisiana Governor Bobby Jindal, he's saying this is just are going to do nothing but big government, and he is one of the people who has decided, one of the governors, that he's not going to accept any of the money, or some of the money. for
Some of the
Louisiana.
money, right. The governor's speech was a little strange. It sounded like he was talking down to people. And some of the commentators said it sounded like he was talking to ninth grade students. And I don't think it was terribly effective. The other thing that's not terribly effective, and all the polls and research shows this right now, is the average person doesn't care that it's more spending right now or that the government's getting involved. Someone's got to get involved, and they don't trust private industry to do it. I mean, the level of distrust about business and Wall Street and finance is so high that somehow they've allowed the government to have a higher level of confidence, you know, and credibility than even the people they were investing with before.
Okay, well, thank you, Stan.
My pleasure.
Sometime we've got to talk about the banks and their big parties. This is Chuck and Coney, and this has been Focus Washington.